Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brabber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are joined by a very special guest, our good friend Tyler. You may know him as Hoop Venue, coming back on the pod. Good to see you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. This is an exciting NBA season. I think the Eastern Conference has been a lot more competitive than a lot of people thought going into it. And then we just had maybe the most active trade deadline I can remember in terms of just sheer volume of moves.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great time to be a basketball fan. I'm super excited to see how the rest of the season pans out.
Yeah, the deadline was obviously nuts for a number of reasons. The volume of players moved, the types of players moved, the teams who were willing to take on those players. There's a lot to dive into there, and we will do that today. But there is one move that I think is absolutely the most significant when you look at the scope of this season, and that is the Cleveland Cavaliers going out there and making the Darius Garland for James Harden swap. We have seen Harden now play a couple games with the Cavs, so I'm curious, Tyler, what are your initial thoughts on that fit for Harden in Cleveland, and do you think that moves the needle to the point where it makes them the favorites in the East?
Yeah, I'm like a broken record with these James Harden moves. I feel like I've made a video on every single one where it's like, this fit is perfect with Philly. This fit is perfect with Brooklyn. This fit is perfect in LA. But like, I do think the process behind how I'm getting there continues to show itself. Like James Harden clearly is just a ridiculously high level offensive player, even in what, year 17 or 16, whatever he's in now. And I think the first thing that's jumped out to me about this Cavs move is two things. One, you have the way he's clearly making an effort to involve Jared Allen in the offense. And that's a very big deal because Jared Allen for years now has been a guy who can give you 70% true shooting just year in and year out. And the question has always been, can he ramp up that volume? And I think in the playoffs, we see teams get a lot more switch heavy. We see teams do things to prevent Jared Allen from cleaning the offensive glass or getting open on the roll. And James Harden's presence as a pick and roll creator is just simply going to enable him to do what he does best as a play finisher. The other thing is, and I think this is one of the limitations that they had with Darius Garland, is that you'd see him really struggle against teams like the Celtics, who had a lot of big, lengthy, switching defenders. And that's because Garland doesn't have the physical advantages or just simply put the isolation game to break down a defense without a screen. Like Garland's game is very much reliant on, I'm going to turn the corner with this 2-on-1 advantage and pick apart your big. But teams like the Celtics, you look at the landscape of the East, the Pistons, to some extent the Knicks when they go to their Mitchell Robinson lineups, the Raptors, the Heat, all of these teams are teams that can pretty much switch across the board. And so you get a guy like Harden, who is at this point still like the third best isolation player on the planet, just opens up the door for them for so much more offensively in the playoffs.
I mean, he just makes everybody better around him. That's my favorite quality of James Harden at this stage in his career. He's such an elite playmaker and passer, and like Tyler's talking about, just knows how to find guys in their spots, like elite court mapping and vision. And one of my favorite qualities of Harden is how deceptive he is with his eyes. It's like an NFL quarterback at times, like where he can lull a defense to sleep or fake that he's going to go to his left side, not even look, and, kick the ball behind him. Like he's a master at this stage in his career, and I really do like the fit. Defenses are never safe with the ball in Harden's hands. He's always looking to capitalize on defensive mistakes. He can make every pass in the game, and I think he's going to maximize both Mobley and Allen. Obviously, Mobley's out. He's going to be out for a few weeks with that calf strain, but when he comes back, I think that I'm really excited to see that fit. I don't want to it's only 2 games. I'm also really excited about him alongside a guy like Jalen Tyson, too. Tyson just knows how to relocate and get to open space, and he's just such a high IQ offensive player. And even late in the shot clock, we've seen in these 2 games, like Tyson finding that spot, and Harden hits him immediately. Like, everything about it. He's less of a defensive liability than Garland. He's more physically imposing. He's routinely more available. And even though he's obviously regressed as a scorer, from his apex, he's very dependent on that jump shot and floater at this stage in his career. That's not really his job here. He's got talented guys around him that he's going to make better. And I've never been much of a Harden guy, but I think when you look at some of the limitations potentially of teams in the Eastern Conference, a Detroit with their half-court issues, like I do look at Cleveland as the clear favorite now. And Harden's growing on me, man. Harden has grown on me. He's just such an awesome player. I can't hate a guy that can pass the ball like Harden. You know what I mean? Like, he's He's just a genius at this stage in his career.
And you can't hate on the old man, bro. When you're still doing it at 36 years old and on your fifth team in 6 years and it like works offensively everywhere, you do just have to give props. And I think things have gone swimmingly so far. I think that Harden has fit in really nicely. Tyler, you mentioned the connection with Jared Allen has just been phenomenal. And that's kind of the most predictable thing of all time, that James Harden is going to make a play finishing rolling big man look awesome. Like what he did for Zoo was fantastic. He's always going to thrive alongside that sort of archetype and boost their production. But it's been really significant just because this has been such a weird year for Jared Allen, a down year, honestly. And part of that is on him. Like his touch has really regressed from last year. Some of those floaters and push shots and hooks where he was amazing last year, he's been very average this year. But I think the other big reason that he's had a down season is because Darius Garland was so important to his success last year, right? Having that sort of quick guard who could create dribble penetration and make those interior passes and had that pick and roll synergy. Garland being so consistently out of the lineup, not himself when he was in the lineup this year, not having that sort of guard to play with definitely impacted Allen negatively. And like you said, Logan, the big thing with Harden, the big edge with him over Garland, I truly do believe, is just availability and the confidence that this guy is going to be on the floor. When he is on the floor, he's going to be healthy. Unfortunately, we just haven't been able to say that about Darius Garland ever since the playoffs last year, and that definitely was one of the big issues holding the Cavs back this regular season and maybe could have been into the playoffs if Garland couldn't get right. So that fit has been really, really good. Harden's already assisted Jared Allen 6 times, and there's been several more plays where he finds him in the pocket, and then Allen makes a read as the short roller, and it's just like really, really nice synergy there. And you mentioned Jalen Tyson too, Logan. That's something that has just stood out to me. Like Harden, brilliant playmaker, absolutely. But the play finishers he's able to get the ball to are really damn good, man. Like, this Cavs offense should be insane. I think they will be insane. They were one of the best offenses this century last year. I think they can get back to that level. But yeah, it's like, okay, when you're finding Jared Allen off the roll, or when you're finding on the wing or in the corner Sam Merrill or Jalen Tyson, like these guys who just stripe the ball, and you're the second creator for this offense, and Donovan Mitchell is playing his best basketball ever, like it's very easy to see how the Cavs are just an absolute offensive machine. And then I do think in terms of some of the things that I was a little bit worried about with Harden's fit, those things have actually gone pretty well so far too. It's a 2-game sample size, but a couple of the things that I liked more about Garland compared to Harden, his ability to play off the catch and off ball overall, where I think Garland is truly exceptional when it comes to the combination of what he can do as a pick and roll on ball guard, and then also being such an elite catch and shooter, willing to move without the ball. Harden has always been much more stagnant off ball, a much lower volume catch and shoot guy. He's taken 7 catch and shoot threes in 2 games. And again, that's a super small sample size, but you watch that Kings game and it's like, hey, he's catching in rhythm and he's just taking those shots and he's knocking down those shots. So if he continues to do that and acquiesce like that, I think that's really good for this Cavs team and his fit with Mitchell. And then my other concern was if Harden would slow down the pace for this team, because we do know that he tends to be a very methodical half-court player. If you look at those Clippers teams, they played really slow, and the Cavs play fast, and Garland played really fast, and I loved his speed in the full court and all that stuff, and I was like, is Harden going to be a little bit at odds with this Cavs team in that way? Again, it's 2 games, but so far he hasn't meaningfully slowed down the pace. So the fit has been good, and he's obviously just like a supremely gifted offensive player. The fact that he's still hard to stay in front of, and like you're watching him against the Nuggets and okay, it's Jokic and Valanciunas in drop coverage, so that's pretty easy, but like he literally makes those floaters look like layups. He can get to the step back 3 whenever he wants. He can get to the line 8 times a game in pretty much any matchup, and then he's this genius playmaker. And him alongside Mitchell, I think they are just going to fry teams. And by the way, I think so much of this was true last year with healthy Darius Garland, and that's part of the reason why I was like, I think this move makes the Cavs better this year, just because Garland's health has been such a problem and because you don't know if you're going to get that fully healthy version of him. But when Garland was firing on all cylinders last year, you were like, yeah, this is the best offensive backcourt in basketball. Who the hell has 2 players that can guard these guys? Really nobody. And now it feels like Harden has brought back that element to this offense. So I think it's really exciting. And then the other big thing is obviously getting Darius Garland off the floor defensively. And when they brought in Harden, I was like, okay, he is still, in my opinion, a negative defender overall, but clearly much less of a liability than Garland, and that has really stood out to me in the first 2 games. The Cavs' team defense hasn't been good, but you can't really judge them on that end without Mobley, in my opinion. Harden individually, though, I actually think has given a couple of encouraging performances defensively. You look at that Denver game, and just the way in which he fits into the context of a team defense is so dramatically different. When you have a 6'5" guy who's strong with a 6'11" wingspan, like, you can position him as the low man, and he can make plays. He had 2 blocks as the low man in that Denver game. He had another, recovery block against Jamal Murray where he made a play with his length. He had another key double team, last minute and a half of the game, where they sent him at Jokic to double, and his length and size was able to interfere with Jokic and limit his visibility and force a turnover. There are just ways in which you can use his size alone that obviously Garland is the smallest guy on the floor in any possible matchup. So there's that team defensive value where Harden can fit in, and Garland so consistently stuck out as a glaring weak point who brought no value as a team defender, and then also could be relentlessly attacked when you're facing a team that has those mismatched stackers, that has those great ball handlers who can just bring him into the action. Harden, not a good defender, but somebody who can fit into that team context. So I do think that makes a meaningful difference. And when it comes to the big question, does this make the Cavs the favorite in the East? I have been a huge Cavs optimist all year long. I was super optimistic about what they would look like with healthy Garland if he could get back to last year's level. So honestly, I've never moved off them as a top threat in the East. But now, just feeling more confident in what you're going to get out of Harden down the stretch of this season, I do think with a second creator of this caliber in Harden, who can stay healthy, who can fit in defensively, and so he limits the 2 biggest concerns you had about Garland. With Mitchell playing at truly, I think, an unbelievable level, the highest level of his career, with the emergence of the most underrated player in the NBA, Jalen Tyson. I genuinely think he is, dude. I've been thinking about that question, and I'm like, I think it's him, bro. He's such a good wing. And then allegedly at some point Max Strus is going to come back. You have the other additions of Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder at the deadline, and I think you've already seen the defensive value of those guys. Keon Ellis, dude, in these 2 fourth quarter comebacks, he has 5 steals and blocks. He's made a number of plays on that end and can fit in offensively as a catch and shoot guy. They would be my favorite in the East. Unless Tatum returns, that changes things, because I think the Celtics are so damn good without him. I would take them, and I like the Vooch move for them. That is obviously the unknown variable here, but when you compare them to Detroit, I trust their offense magnitudes more. When you compare them to New York, I trust the Cavs defense a whole lot more. And so I do look at them among the teams that are currently healthy in the East, and I think that they're the most complete. Are you there, Tyler? Would you give them that nod as the top dogs in the East?
Yeah, probably. And to your point about Harden's defense, in the fourth quarter against the Kings, he was matched up with DeMar DeRozan. That's not something you could ever do with Darius Garland,
No.
and it's because of Harden's size and length in the post and his ability to just be a brick wall. When you look at the landscape of the East, I think that there are a lot of teams that like to mismatch hunt at the top of the conference, a lot of teams that like to switch on defense, and like we've talked about, Harden addresses both of those issues that Garland had, while also then, of course, being more durable, being available. And I think the big point here is that the Cavs already touched all of the indicators you'd expect from a championship level team last year. We just never got to see it actualized because of Garland's toe. Then Mobley gets hurt. Then Max Strus gets hurt. DeAndre Hunter gets hurt. Everyone for that team got ravaged by injuries. And that's not to say they would have beat the Pacers, but I do still think a lot of people underrated how good that team actually was because of the way it collapsed. They had a top 20 offense in NBA history, plus 7 relative offensive rating, while also being a top 10 defense. They were 2 points better than the league average defense. I went back and looked at every team in NBA history that was at least 7 points better than the league average offense and at least 2 points better than the league average defense. That list is the 1971 Bucks, the 1992 Bulls, the 1996 Bulls, the 1997 Bulls, the 2024 Celtics, and the 2016 Warriors.
That's insane. That's insane company.
Absurd. That's how good the Cavs were last year. They were the 4th or 5th team to win 64 games in this decade. They were absurdly good. And essentially all of the things that made Garland, made the offense hum with Garland is what Harden brings to the table. Then you also add Keon Ellis. You also add Dennis Schroeder. You have a better version of Donovan Mitchell. I think the Cavs should be the favorites. And they're not a perfect team. Like, I do still think they lack big wings. They lack big wings who can put the ball on the deck, things like that. But the shooting talent, the finishing talent, the playmaking talent, while still having two elite rim protectors and a pretty switchable overall defense, I do think if fully healthy, and that is a pretty big if at this point, but if fully healthy, I do think they're the best team in the East.
I mean, and they're even better than last year, I'd say. DeAndre Hunter just sucks.
On paper.
I mean, he stinks. Like, I'm so mad that the Kings just have donated so many good point guards at the deadline year after year. But, I mean, I just think other teams have really major flaws, too. Unless, like, Detroit deploys Isaiah Stewart and he, like, murders Donovan Mitchell, you know, I don't really know what's going to slow down Cleveland, honestly. Mm-hmm. And Boston, I could see it. It's a lot for me to expect. And I know Tatum's had a long recovery process, but
he's coming to the G. I don't know. I feel like I go back and forth with the Tatum thing of like he's working out in front of media. It's a huge, great indicator. And then they say, well, maybe don't expect him back this year. But now he's going to be playing in the G League in February, man. That's a long runway.
That is.
We'll see.
We will see. Boston is on that short list, I think, of contenders. But Cleveland, I look at, I think they have the most reliable offense in the conference now after their acquisition of Harden. I think that they have arguably, I think probably the best depth of any team, too. There's so much shooting talent. There's so many two-way guys, so many good guards and guys who can put the ball on the floor. Like, if you do lose one guy who can step up. So, I'm there with Cleveland, man. I'm bought in. As long as Mobley comes back and looks right, I think I probably, again, like Tyler said, health is a big component, but I think I would take Cleveland out of the East.
I've repeated this spiel so many times, but like you said, Tyler, like I think last year's Cavs were underrated and were always going to be underrated because they got torn up by injuries at the end of that year. And my thing was, okay, if so many guys can just individually get back to the level that they were at, because like genuinely a lot of dudes have just had down seasons for the Cavs. Allen has, Mobley has offensively. I mean, just like major shooting issues and the free throw stuff has been really, really bizarre with him. And he just hasn't been as good as he was last year. And then obviously Garland had all sorts of issues when he could even be on the floor this year. But I looked at all the components and I was like, they're all still there from this team that just won 64 games and was this great offense and was this good defense. And then I actually feel even better about the depth. I mean, especially now, dude, because I genuinely think they turned a bad player into two good players with the DeAndre Hunter for Schroeder Keon Ellis swap. Like, Hunter had been so bad for them. He's such a ball stopper. He was having a horrible shooting season. Like, Schroeder and Keon Ellis are guards who make winning plays. They meaningfully improve this team's guard depth, especially considering obviously Lonzo was such a flop that they ended up having to waive him. Man. And Jalen Tyson, bro, I'm going to say it again. Like, he's a stud, bro. He's a 48% three-point shooter who, like, can make plays with the ball in his hands. Underrated passing feel. I think he has even more of an offensive bag than we've really seen them unleash. Like, he is a versatile on-ball player, too. He can post up. He can get to the mid-range. And he consistently takes on, like, difficult defensive assignments. Max Strus, I do believe, again, I don't know if he's going to be healthy at this point, but I think he is at some point this year. He's one of the best offensive role players in basketball. There's just so many pieces that make the ceiling for this team so incredibly high. And I just think that Harden compared to Garland meaningfully raises the floor of this team because he is so much more of a known commodity. So that's kind of what I want to clarify. I didn't love the trade for the Cavs, but the reasons for that were purely about long-term asset management, pretty much. Like, is the best return you can get for Darius Garland actually 36-year-old James Harden when you're trading Garland at an all-time low in value because all of these concerns about him are at their peak right now? It wasn't that Harden wasn't going to be good for this team. I said I think he makes them better this year. It wasn't even that, like, they should never trade Darius Garland because I understand all the reasons they did. My thing was just long-term, it's probably better if they wait this year out and if they're able to find somebody who is a better long-term fit around Mitchell and Mobley than James Harden. Because I do think this is a very short-term move. It is definitely very, very focused on this window. But when we look at this window, I think it makes them a legitimately great team. And I think they always had the potential to be that, but now I feel more confident in their ability to hit that level. And they really just need to, like, re-engage defensively because they've been playing below their level on that end all year long. Like, this was an automatic top 10 defense every single year that they had Allen and Mobley, and now they've been a super average defense this year. But it's a really cool experiment that we're getting with James Harden here. Like, I think a lot of people are understandably inclined to take like the negative angle of, oh my God, this dude asks out of every possible situation. It never ultimately works out with Harden. 5 teams in 6 years we've literally never seen from like a star playing at this level. And I get all that. But then I think the flip side of that is, how cool is it that this guy in that time has had so many completely different offensive situations, like fundamentally different offensive fits? And with every one of these pairings he's had, I mean, going back to him and CP3, right? If we just look at everything since 2018, as it's sort of been a revolving door of partners for James Harden, that fit was obviously amazing. It led to one of the best offenses ever, even though it was not an intuitive fit on paper. The Russ stuff, they were still a good basketball team. It wasn't a good fit. I put that more so on Russ and like him being such an egregiously bad fit alongside Harden, where they had to trade their center, and like that was just kind of silly.
I mean, and a lot of these things are just from such a long time ago. This is a
Right.
completely different James Harden. He's just in a
Totally.
completely different role now.
Well, but I'm just going through the entire progression and I'm being like, it's pretty crazy that the CP3 thing was such a hit when a lot of people's initial reaction was, how are you going to play 2 ball dominant point guards together like that? And it led to this all-time great offense. And then you just look through all the progression and it's like, in Brooklyn, led to an all-time great offense alongside KD and Kyrie. And then in Philly, he and Embiid were excellent together offensively. And in Los Angeles, he and Kawhi were excellent together offensively. And like all the while, he's been able to do this sort of oscillating between volume scoring and volume playmaking as needed. Like if you look at just the difference in scoring rates and usage rates when he shares the floor with an Embiid or a Kawhi compared to when he has to carry those groups without one of those guys on the floor, like they're massive. I just think it's fascinating because this is a guy who I would have thought of as not a particularly versatile offensive player, just like you kind of play his style, right? Especially when you look at like his peak years in Houston. That was like peak Harden ball. Somebody who needs the ball in his hands a lot, somebody who's not going to deliver a lot of off-ball value. And yet, we've gotten this really unique lens into seeing how many different situations he can work in, and he's been able to make the adjustments to work in all of them. If it's playing with another on-ball guard, if it's playing with more of a scoring wing, if it's playing with a scoring big. And I just think that's pretty cool. And I actually think it's a testament to James Harden being the offensive genius he is, like you said, Tyler, really regardless of situation at this point.
Yeah, the idea of portability is really being challenged with James Harden, I think.
100%.
Because we view portable skills as like the ability to play off the ball, high level shooting, good extra passing, quick decision making, maybe transition, like speeding up the pace, and because there's no really need to share the ball in transition. But I think what's interesting about the James Harden stuff is that he has played in situations with elite off-ball players, so you could lean towards like, okay, that's where the portability comes into play. Like you play with Kyrie and Kevin Durant, 2 of the best off-ball weapons of the century. You play with Kawhi Leonard, someone who can easily flex between an on and off ball role. Zubats, and then now Donovan Mitchell, an elite shooter and second side attacker, as well as Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, these role guys. But I think the big thing with Harden has been the way he's been able to shift his volume as a passer and scorer.
Absolutely.
Between like he gets to Brooklyn. And this is still peak James Harden. I think people forget that when he first got to Brooklyn, this was James Harden at his peak still. And it's, okay, I'm going to take like 8 less shots. I'm going to make like 20 more passes. My turnovers are going to go down, but my shooting efficiency is going to skyrocket. My scoring number. And then in the playoffs, you get this series against Boston where he's like 28-11 on 72% true shooting or something stupid. Then he gets to Philly. Joel Embiid's numbers are leaps and bounds better with Harden on the court. He's like a 36 per 75 scorer on 66% true shooting next to Harden. And that's because of Harden's ability to operate in the pick and roll at Embiid's pace and find him in the pocket with those shovel passes. Then he gets to the Clippers and it's Zubats, and it's, I'm going to look for mismatches. I'm going to oscillate between, I'm a 16-8 guy my first year with the Clippers, but now that our offense isn't as good, I need to be a 25-8 guy. And it's absurd to me the way he can just flex between roles, and then also the dynamic way in which he gets to those spots. Like in the Clippers, we saw a lot more of him running off of pin downs and curling into pick and roll action instead of stationary spread pick and roll, and that keeps the defense moving horizontally. I just think Harden has shown time and time again, whatever's needed of him. Yes, when you get him on your team, you're going to structure your offense around his touches, but those touches come in a variety of ways, and what he chooses to do with those touches completely change depending on who's on the court with him.
Yeah, it's such a great point, dude. And I had that similar thought of like, Harden is challenging my ideas of portability because I'm somebody who thinks that that matters a lot, right? Like additive basketball skill sets, ways that you can deliver value without forcing the entire team to like adhere to your style, without always having to have the ball. And maybe there is some truth to that. But what I actually think is more true is that I underestimated, and I think a lot of people underestimated, James Harden's offensive portability, because it's not just like, oh, on-ball guard works everywhere. That doesn't mean that this would be the case with Trae Young or even Luka Doncic. Like, I truly don't believe that it would. I think what is so incredible about Harden is, as you said, that sliding scale of scoring and playmaking volume, dude. The numbers are ridiculous, okay? With Kawhi in LA, when he and Kawhi shared the court, well, the Clippers had a 123 offensive rating, which is absurd. Harden individually, 18 points per 75 possessions, 10 assists per 75 possessions. Then you compare to when Harden is carrying the offense truly without Kawhi, right? And there's still a plus offense, 117 offensive rating, which is impressive. Harden's individual numbers, dude, 27 points per 75, 8 assists, and he maintains his efficiency. And then you look at Philly, when he shares the court with Embiid, 124 offensive rating. Ridiculous offense. And you mentioned how Embiid's numbers improved. Harden, 19 points per 75 in those minutes, 11 assists per 75. Again, very playmaking-centric sort of style. Without Embiid, though, it's the same story as in LA. He still leads them to be a plus offense, 117 offensive rating. He averages 28 points per 75 and 10 assists. Like, there's just so few players in NBA history who can do that. And to be that level of elite scorer when I want to, elite passer when I want, like he's just had some of the most radical shifts ever. You mentioned what he did going from 2020 in Houston, where he's a 34 point per game scorer, to 2021 in Brooklyn, where he's like your third leading scorer, but now he's leading the league in assists. He's just a special kind of offensive genius, dude. And I really don't think he is the example that should be used when it comes to like offensive rigidity clearly at all, because there was a time when I think he was viewed as like that guy, and I think he is really an exception to sort of the stereotypical idea of whatever the heliocentric ball dominant guard. Like he's shown an incredible ability to adapt and make literally any offense better. And you're right, not all the fits have been perfect. You know, even as good as the Rockets offense was, like maybe if you put a player as great as Chris Paul, who was a better fit, right? If it wasn't two guys who need the ball, maybe they could have been even better, but I don't know that there's a ton of value into getting of like that level of hypotheticals, because it did work. They both made it work, and Harden's just consistently made it work.
You said that Harden's one of the only guys in NBA history who could do that, like flex between roles like that, between 30-point scorer and an 18 and 10 guy.
Right.
Is he the only guy in NBA history? Like,
it's a great
I was
question.
trying to think, while you said that, I was thinking like Steve Nash. I don't know if you can get to like 30 points. Like same thing with like Magic Johnson. You look at Chris Paul, same thing. I don't think he has the isolation scoring presence. The only guy I could think of is like someone who has that scoring ability, but then would mentally have to totally scale back. But I don't think like Luka would do that.
No, I totally agree. I don't think Luka would be able to do at all what Harden has done in recent years. And I think you're right. I mean, I think there's nobody who has ever done like what Harden did 2020 Houston to 2021 Brooklyn, and then what Harden did again 2024 Clippers to 2025 Clippers, even to 2026. Like he's upped his scoring volume even further. There aren't changes like that where a player in their prime can just say, yeah, I'm going to drop off my scoring volume by 10 points per game, but become more efficient and increase my playmaking volume by 3 assists per game. And then it's like, okay, now here I am. Like you said, he was a 16-8 guy, and then he became a 23-8 guy. Like, and now he's a 26-8 guy. It's crazy. I really don't think anybody else has ever done it like he's doing it. So shout out to him, dude. I'm really excited for this fit, and I really am pulling for the Cavs. I really enjoy the brand of basketball they're playing. I think they look really good. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about this team and some of the players, and the amount of flack that I've seen Donovan Mitchell catch this year, like inexplicably in my opinion, when he's honestly been backpacking this team in a lot of ways. He's the one guy who has like delivered all his expected value and more. They're a very cool basketball team, and Harden has definitely been a really fun part of that through 2 games so far. But we talk about this crazy deadline overall, and Tyler, I'm going to go to you first here again, because Logan and I have already discussed this a fair bit. It wasn't just a very happening deadline. It was a weird deadline. What was the most interesting aspect of that deadline to you? If it's a specific move, if it's an overarching theme, what stands out?
Yeah, maybe this is a cop-out answer because of just how much happened, but my biggest takeaway and what I found most interesting was the aggression from certain teams to just make risky moves. Like the Cavs, we already talked about. They not only go and grab James Harden, they get Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder. The Clippers decide, like, they're not going to hold on to these assets in James Harden and Zubats. They're like, all right, we're going to kickstart our weird rebuild period while we still have Kawhi, who's been like the third best player in basketball. But you go and get a bunch of assets. You get potentially a top 9 first-round pick next year, depending on how that pans out. You get Darius Garland as your young all-star of the future. You get Benedict Mathurin, who's shown a lot of promise as a scorer. So you kind of just like kickstart the next era of Clippers basketball. On the flip side of that, the Pacers take a huge gamble. They're like, we believe once we get Halliburton back, we're good enough to compete for a championship, which I definitely think they are. And they go out and get one of the better starting centers in the league for potentially a top 5 first-round pick. So it's a gamble. The Grizzlies do a great job of starting their rebuild by moving off of Jaren Jackson Jr. Now you combine the Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane trades. They stack like 7 first-round picks. I believe they're tied with OKC and Brooklyn for the most first-round picks of any team over the next 7 years or something like that. So the Grizzlies kickstart their rebuild. I think Ty Jerome is amazing. He's so good. Zach Edey looked really, really good this year. Cedric Howard's a really fun rookie. You get Walter Clayton Jr. in that deal, so you just kickstart your rebuild there. And then on the flip side of that, again, the Jazz take a huge risk where it's like, we're going to get off of some picks. We're going to get off of some of these young guys. We think Keontae George is our guard of the future. Let's supplement him with the biggest front court in NBA history that also happens to be able to shoot threes. So we got a lot of teams creating new interesting looks. The Jazz are getting into territory we've never seen before. Teams got aggressive. Nobody was stagnant. And my biggest like pet peeve with teams is when they get stagnant. When it feels like they're close to making a move and then nothing happens. Like the current state of the Milwaukee Bucks is where I hate teams to end up.
Yeah, I think everybody hates the current Milwaukee Bucks, except I guess Giannis, because he's back for more and he's not fucking leaving.
Yeah, you don't want to end up where the Sacramento Kings are, just complacent and giving away good players.
The Sacramento Kings are a marvel. I'm sorry. I just have to say something real quick. The fact that they are the worst team in the NBA right now
makes sense.
As so many teams are so actively trying to be bad, and they were trying to win this year, it's incredible. It is something I think only Sacramento could pull off. So congratulations, Logan. Go Kings.
Agreed. Yeah, go Kings. They're going to figure it out in like 30 years maybe.
I don't know.
I'm
optimistic.
I'm satisfied. I agree with you, Tyler. It's frustrating when teams have such a glaring weakness or something, or where they keep hitting their head on this wall. And like Cleveland, one of the other big components of this to me is just how drastically guys' value has shifted over last year since the deadline, but also since the beginning individually of this year, right? Like a lot of these guys that got traded at this year's deadline or close to it, if you had told me a year ago or at the beginning of the season that they would have get moved, I would have told you were crazy. Like a lot of these guys I would have considered almost borderline untouchable, right?
Well, yeah, Anthony Davis got you Luka Doncic.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Like it's preposterous. Like how quick it can just happen and how quickly like your value and the perception of you league-wide just Anthony Davis looked at a year ago as one of the most valuable commodities you could have. Like you said, somehow you get an idiot like Nico Harrison to deal Luka for him, and now he's a toxic asset. Nobody wants him whatsoever. Trae Young, one of the only guys in NBA history to put up this, gaudy, like he's on his career, he's like 25 points and 12 assists per game. Incredible offensive production, an all-time offensive engine in raw volume. Again, I would have looked at as, man, you can't move off of this guy unless you're getting a Godfather kind of deal. And he is now viewed as this sort of toxic asset. Like, that's one of the other big themes of the deadline. I'm pro-aggression. I'm honestly, now that the Cavs have gotten rid of Garland, and I know we've only seen 2 games with Harden, I'm glad they made the move. Because I do think there's a world in which maybe Garland doesn't ever figure out, doesn't ever get healthy. Maybe he is such a defensive liability that he just gets picked on relentlessly. Again, this is hypothetical. I don't want to get too much into this, but the Cavs had an issue, and they've had an issue the past 2 seasons, and they addressed it, and they were aggressive and wanted to make that move, but the other thing interrelated with this is like literally all the guys moved. AD, Garland, Trey, I would have looked at as nearly untouchable. Even Jaren. Like, and Jaren has glaring flaws as a player, right? But he also progressed and became, he had the best scoring season of his career last season. He developed massively as a scorer, is an awesome defensive player. Obviously, he had a down series against OKC. That happened to almost everybody in the playoffs except Siakam. But, he was a guy that was peaking, and just how dramatically, like in a year, all of these guys' value almost completely shifted on its head.
It's interesting you say that. I don't know that I agree as much as you do. Like, I think it's not that the writing was on the wall with these guys, but you could definitely see the outcome down the line where it's like every one of those teams feels, hey, these guys are ultimately too flawed for us to
Can I
be
also
in
say
on
quickly,
as like building blocks for us.
I also think that Cleveland recognizes that this is a weaker East, and I think they also recognize that this is an opportunity to capitalize on that and probably their best chance to win the East.
I think that's true. However, I have a couple issues with that thinking. Number one being winning the East, it's good, it's progress. Winning the title is the ultimate objective, and winning the East and winning the title this year could not be two more different challenges. Like, I really don't think anybody in the East has a shot this year. I'm going to be honest.
My only pushback to that would be, because I generally agree in terms of the level the teams are at, but you never know like what type of luck is going to be involved in you winning a championship.
That is
so
true.
It could be a situation where it's like, and God forbid, obviously I'm not wanting this to happen for Cleveland, but it's like, what if you get into a final series against the Thunder and then Shea tears his ACL? Or like what happened to Halliburton, tears his Achilles. And it's like, then you put yourself in that position to get lucky.
You're absolutely right. There's no disagreeing with that. But I think the things that the Cavs were balancing when they made this decision, there's a lot of short-term versus long-term value, and I think I just would have more so leaned on prioritizing the long-term value in a number of these ways, because I am a Darius Garland believer, even though I think there's a lot of reasons that we are seeing teams show real concern about trying to build around these small guards who are huge defensive liabilities, and like I'm mostly aligned with that. I think Garland is a fundamentally different talent than like a Trae Young, because I think there is a level of offensive versatility. There is an offensive efficiency ceiling with him that is just different when it comes to his ability to deliver off-ball value. And I just can't forget what this guy did last year, where without Donovan Mitchell, bro, he was averaging 27 points and 9 assists per 75 on 60% true shooting and leading the Cavs to a 125 offensive rating. Like, that's when he was the guy for that offense. Those are in minutes without Donovan Mitchell. He's 26. I get the foot concerns. I get the fit concerns. I get the defensive concerns. But I do feel like, and this is ironic because, like, I think the Cavs look really good. I think I'm going to pick the Cavs to win the East. I'm saying all those things about this year, and I still feel like maybe they let the pressure cooker get to them a little bit too much, of feeling like, hey, we have failed year over year, when it's like, well, you haven't really as you were configured now, though. Like, if you look all the way back, 2023, they just weren't nearly the team that they would become. Garland hadn't taken his leap yet. Mobley hadn't taken his leap. The depth wasn't even as good. And then 2024, they got screwed by injuries. Jared Allen got hurt. Mitchell got hurt. And then 2025, as we said, they just got ravaged by injuries. So I think it is a improvement for them in the short term, getting Harden. I just worry if they undervalued Darius Garland as a supremely talented 26-year-old guard who I could see absolutely thriving with the Clippers and making all-NBA teams. And then it's like, even if you were eventually going to move off of him, was it short-sighted to go for Harden, who, good as he is, how many more years is he going to give you? Like, I'm not even necessarily talking about him regressing at this point. Well, it's going to happen eventually. He has incredible guard longevity, but also, James Harden hasn't played anywhere for more than 2.5 years this decade. So, like, what's the staying power there? I just still have some qualms about that. That's basically my entire view on the whole Cavs trade situation.
I think that I agree with you. I think the Cavs traded Garland at his all-time low asset value. I completely agree with that. I do think I'm just fundamentally lower on Garland as a player than you are, and I am worried with his style of play and the lingering foot issues if like that pops up again. Like, I don't know, man. I know how special Garland can be. I also think it's really hard to win a championship when you have that kind of defensive liability, when he has I I don't know, man. I agree with you. I think there's a balancing act to be done here, but I just think I'm kind of off of Garland a little bit more so, like long term.
I feel like I'm somewhere in between both of you because I'm very high on Garland's skill set. I think he's just an incredible player. The ability to the agility, ball handling, passing, all world level shooting, and then also the ability to play off the ball. He said he studies Steph Curry. You can very obviously see that with the way he relocates, constantly moving. I also think he's very clearly a step above like the Trae Young class of defender. Like he works hard, and like it's a cliche, but like he does play very physical for his limitations. And I do think in those critical matchups, like against OKC last year and against Boston, you could see him really working to like not be a mismatch, even though obviously sometimes you're just too limited.
Yeah.
And then positionally, he doesn't lose guys. He doesn't miss rotations. He's just fundamentally kind of sound. But I do think the bigger issue with Garland is that the injuries obviously is the big thing because it's not even just the toe. He had the jaw injury a year before. He was dealing with hamstring stuff before that. Like it's always something. I don't think he's ever had a healthy postseason run. Maybe the Knicks series, but I feel like he even had nagging injuries then. The other thing is just like the way the league has progressed with teams getting bigger, lengthier, more ball pressure, more switching. I think Garland's style of offense is something that is just clearly going to always lose value in the playoffs, where it's like now teams are, every time it's a critical matchup, we're going to force you to beat us as a scorer, and then he gets like 4 or 5 assists. And what really is the value of Garland as a guy who takes 18 shots all in isolation and gives you 4 or 5 assists while also being picked on the defensive end? I think that's the extent of it. Because like in the regular season, Garland last year was clearly like a top 7 offensive player on the planet. He was ridiculous. But I think even at full health in the playoffs, we would have seen some of those issues pop up just because of some of those physical limitations.
I don't disagree with any of that. And like, I want to be clear, I'm not super high on Darius Garland. I just feel like I'm kind of the only one remembering how good he was offensively last year. Like, it just feels to me like everybody has gotten so low on him, and I just don't think I'm there. Like, people acting like his contract is some albatross, like this was a no-brainer for the Cavs. I'm just like, the whole idea that, like, Harden is a substantially better player than Garland was last year, like, I don't agree with any of that stuff. So I get the health concerns. I get the major defensive concerns. I think, as worried about that stuff, you know, a small guard who can be relentlessly put into action and attacked, like, that worries me as much as it does anybody. I just think, like, there is a line, right? And I've talked about it with Jalen Brunson, okay? If you can be a Jalen Brunson level offensive player, it's still gonna be hard to build a title team around you because you're working to cover up that guy defensively. But clearly you are on the side of, all right, you're a top 15 player in the league, whatever. Like, we're going to give it a shot to build around you. And I see a world where Garland gets there. I also see a world where this toe thing continues to be a huge issue. And like, for a guard who's so reliant on quickness and explosiveness, that would be a huge problem. So I just can see both outcomes. And I feel like right now some people are acting as though Darius Garland is like cooked. And I just totally vehemently disagree with that, because I think there's a world where he goes on like a crazy offensive run with the Clippers. And again, like, he's still a flawed basketball player for sure, but he also has offensive superpowers and a combination of elite offensive traits, like you were saying, Tyler. Like, I mean, he's a top 5 shooter on the planet. He might be the best guy when it comes to floater touch on the planet. Literally 60% on floaters at volume last year. The passing, the off ball, the quickness, like, he's just special offensive talent. So, you know, I just can't quit on that guy.
I love how this looped back to the Cavs.
I know it did. We're doing an hour on the Cavs, I guess, but I don't mind. I love the Cavs. I love talking about the Cavs.
I also don't want to put words in your mouth, but you do feel shortchanged that the Cavs never actually, like, got one run with all these guys healthy, right?
Yes. That does bum me out, especially because it's like, bro, again, looking back to 2023 and 2024, like, it's not the same. Garland wasn't the player he became. Mobley wasn't the player he became. The depth wasn't even as good. So I'm like, how are we really comparing those 48, 51 win Cavs teams to a Cavs team that just won 64 games? And Tyler's talking about hitting thresholds that only the greatest teams in the history of this league have hit. Like, that's just not an apt comparison to me. So I do think that's enough on the Cavs. But yeah, I just don't think that Harden was the right long-term fit if they were going to move off of Garland, which I do understand them doing, yet I am still something of a Garland optimist, and I hope it works out for him with the Clippers. And there is a world where this is a win for both sides because the Garland-Mitchell backcourt maybe just needed to be broken up at some point. And maybe the component here that we're not talking about enough is what if Donovan Mitchell was banging on their door saying, we need to make a move? Like maybe the urgency was coming from him, and you got to keep your best player happy. So like, I get the move. It's just, I have complicated feelings about it. Anyways, this all comes back to Logan making a point about feeling that some guys who a year ago were untouchable are now getting moved. I think it makes sense that they all did. And I actually think it more so reflects how quickly teams are willing to move off of stars who they believe are fundamentally flawed enough to not deliver their $50 million value, 40-something million dollar value in today's NBA with new cap constraints. Because I think it's like Garland, we know the concerns that would lead a team to move off of them. Jaren Jackson Jr., we know the great strengths. We also know the fundamental flaws. And I think as great as last regular season was for him, and even though, like you said, Logan, everybody struggled offensively against the Thunder, it was particularly ugly with Triple J. Like how reliant his offensive game is on mismatch attacking and how incapable he was of attacking mismatches against that OKC defense. The fact that he is such a negative passer, it's kind of ridiculous. And then you have all the sort of weirdness of like what you're trying to do with him defensively, the foul trouble, right? Not being somebody who anchors the five. It just makes sense to me, especially with the direction that Memphis is taking as a team, where like they're absolutely right to hit the reset because there's no saving this window with Ja being as cooked as he is. And I think they did the right thing to just get a ton of assets for Bane and Triple J combined. Like that makes sense to me. And I think that would have made sense after the playoffs last year. It wouldn't have been shocking. And then AD, it's like, yeah, I was thinking, okay, the Mavs are probably going to try to stick it out with this window. But then it's like once the injury things piled up, well, guess what? AD's not a very valuable player when he's 33 years old and always injured and regressing. And then Trey, I actually thought this was like very clearly a make or break year for him. We said this coming into the year. It's like, okay, you've done your cool, fun offensive floor raising stuff. You got the Hawks to be a plus offense last year when you were playing with like 4 neutral to probably slight negative offensive players alongside you in that starting 5 once Jalen Johnson got hurt. Like you've proven you can do that. Now your team has the talent. They have the defensive personnel. They have more ball handlers. Can you fit in to an actual really good team? Can you be delivering, again, $50 million of value? And the answer was kind of a resounding no for the Hawks. So I just think with all the flaws we've seen from these guys, like in their own ways, it was a prove it year for Garland. He didn't prove it. It was kind of a change in direction year for the Grizzlies, and they decided that Triple J ultimately was a piece that had to go. AD, again, like he just wasn't delivering his value. So I think what I see more so in terms of the overarching theme from all of these star trades is that there's a fundamental recalibration of how stars are being valued in the modern NBA. I think more so than ever, NBA teams are smart. They are aware of some of the specific flaws that have arisen in this league that is so different, where depth is better and more important than ever, where there are some unique offensive and defensive issues that can be posed for players, like depending on, okay, can they score against switching defenses? Can they guard in a switching scheme, right? Like all these things that have just come, these new problems with the evolution of the game. And then the CBA obviously bearing over all of this, like for so long, pretty much for all of modern NBA history, the philosophy has kind of been, oh, that guy's a star and that guy's available, like throw 4 firsts at him. Or that guy's a star and his contract is up. Oh, you max him. You max a star no matter what. I just don't think that's happening anymore. And I think moving off of guys like Triple J, Trae Young, Darius Garland, AD, like they are all in their own ways damaged goods, flawed players. And that's why to me, this was more so like the sort of bargain bin all-star sale. And that's what we saw at this deadline.
I think what's crazy, though, is specifically with Trey, he was essentially just salary dumped. That's what was crazy to me. It wasn't the fact that they moved off of him. It was that they didn't really get an asset for him. It was just like, we don't want Trae Young anymore. Let's dump him to Washington and get whatever we can to match the contracts. That's what was crazy to me. Jaren actually got a pretty hefty return. I feel like that actually made sense. But like even Anthony Davis, he got like some gimmick first round picks, like next year's OKC pick. It's like,
well, and even Jaren, Desmond Bane went for 4 firsts. His teammate this offseason, Mikal Bridges, a year and a half ago, went for 5 firsts. Triple J went for like 1 good first, right? There's 1 Utah pick in there. And then the other 2, given protections, like aren't going to be very valuable. So even Jaren, I think if this were 3 years ago, if this were a different NBA, would have gone for more. But I think that's why we have these sort of weird teams being buyers and being aggressive, like you're saying, Tyler. It's because they're able to buy low on these players, because now you're not just incorporating, okay, what's the draft capital I'm sending out? What assets am I sending out? What does it mean for my basketball team if I'm paying $50 million to Trae Young? Or if I'm allocating almost $100 million to Triple J and Lauri Markkanen, right? Like, you got to factor all of these things in now, so more than ever before, which is what I think is so interesting.
Well, that just speaks to the big overarching point that, like, front offices are getting a lot smarter. Like, basketball in general is getting a lot smarter. And since the dawn of the creation of the sport, basically in every sport, the goal of the game is to win. That's the goal of the game. And you win by helping your team score as many points as you possibly can while preventing the other team from scoring as many points as they can. And there's so much that goes into that. Basketball is particularly unique in that two players can have the same impact and they couldn't be more different. Or two players could be pretty much the same but have a wildly different impact. And that's because of everything that happens on the margins. And it kind of seems to me like maybe it's the rise in analytics. Maybe it's just like the rise in aggressive play style and pace and space and all that. But teams are waking up to the players that make winning plays and the players that make losing plays. Like, if Derek White became available, a team would field out everything to get him because of everything he does on the margins. Right. And I think that really speaks to, like, the direction the league is heading in, where it's like the no flaws game. And it's like, what can you do on the margins to make winning plays? Because one thing that stands out with all three of these guys is that on the margins, they don't make positive winning plays. Like, AD obviously has all these superpowers, doesn't get back in transition, takes a lot of bad shots. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there. Trae Young, one of the biggest defensive liabilities in the game, takes a lot of inefficient shots, turns the ball over a lot, so you get flaws there. Jaren Jackson Jr., maybe the most negative influence on the possession game in the whole league. Like, can't rebound and turns the ball over a lot relative to how much he handles it. So it's like, when you look at the landscape, like, look at the Boston Celtics, for example. They win in two areas. They win the math game with 3-point shooters, and they dominate extra opportunities to score because they never turn the ball over and they grab a ton of offensive rebounds. And it's like, yeah, the added bonus is Jaylen Brown can give you 30 points a game efficiently, but it's all of those little things that drive winning. And you see that in the lineup data, where the Celtics with Derek White on the court are like a plus 18 net rating without Jaylen Brown. So I just think we're teams are starting to wake up to, like, what the nerds have been recognizing for the past few years, and that's everything happens on the margins.
Carson was geeking on me last episode when I was saying it, but he was like, yeah, man, you've been effort maxing today. But it is real, man. Like, there's so many – basketball is such a global sport, and you need a ball and a hoop, man. It's like baseball, right? You need a bottle cap and a stick. Like, it's very accessible, and because it's very accessible – more people globally are playing the sport more than ever before, which means the talent pool is deeper than ever before. And if you are a $50 million guy and you're not going to bust your ass, there's 1,000 guys below you that will. And that speaks to another point. I completely agree with you, Tyler. It's the margins, it's effort, but it's also, like Carson was mentioning earlier, can you deliver at the value for your price point? It's more important now than ever that you are delivering on your salary. And if you're not going to do that, if you aren't going to do the little things on top of that, I think you also have decreased value with some of these salary cap restrictions where – and also, all these guys that we're talking about, you guys have hit it on the head. They all are inherently flawed players. If it's availability concerns, if it is a glaring weakness in your game, like Triple J rebounding and playmaking, like all of that, I think factors into a lot of these front office decisions. And teams are more aggressive than ever before, man, ready to pull the trigger. But it's fascinating, man. I feel like the game has just shifted so much over the past, like, 5 to 10 years.
It has. Bro, well, I mean, there was a shift from 10 years ago to 5 years ago, and then there was a shift from 5 years ago to today, and there's even a shift from last year to this year. Like, it's constantly evolving. I truly think, as somebody who's watched a lot of historical basketball, this is the fastest period of evolution that we have ever seen in this game. Like, the speed with which what teams value are changing, and I do think it's all trending in a direction of smarter basketball. And I do think part of it is just the talent pool being better. I think more so than ever before, this is a game that is about depth. It is about matchups. It is about the ability to exploit weaknesses in the opposition through a level of schematic advancement and versatile personnel that just didn't exist before. And absolutely, like you said, Tyler, the margins are part of that. Fundamentally, avoiding weaknesses is part of that. Understanding, right, additive value and where that comes, guys who can fit in to a winning team context, guys who do the things with their micro traits that don't show up in the box score but show up in the impact, show up in terms of wins and losses. Understanding that just because a guy can produce 25 and 10 like Trae Young doesn't mean that he is a meaningfully positive player for you, right? He's not somebody who you can just make work in any team context at all. In fact, you have to like totally reshape your roster to try to make it work around him. And then guess what? He's still probably not good enough to justify that. Like, these are all the realities that NBA teams are confronting and understanding now. And I just think it's really cool. And like, we are seeing shifts even from last year. I think the playoffs last year were so interesting because the two teams that went deepest were extremely deep, and they dominated the possession game, and they dominated the transition margin. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we have seen teams now really put, more so than ever before, a premium on transition offense, but also keeping opposing teams out of transition, right? Extending their defenses more than ever, ball pressure, and finding quality role players wherever they can. If you can get 4 good role players at $12 million a pop, that's going to be more valuable to your team than Trae Young at $48 million. And I just think pretty much everybody's aware of that now. So it's just a question of like, okay, who is in a spot where they are comfortable enough with not having to give up many resources? They have the cap space. They feel like they have a need for a Trae Young. And that's where like the Wizards come in as the suitor, right? It was never going to be a good team that traded for Trae Young at this point. They're not going to be able to fit him in. He's not going to deliver enough value given his price point. It was always going to be somebody who's just kind of like, why not? And that really is the trend of the deadline.
Yeah, and it speaks to the fact that, like, what Logan brought up with how talented the league is. I think a lot of fans understate how many different players are capable of putting up these gaudy box score numbers if your team's going to win 38 games. Like, I promised you, if you put Austin Reeves on a team where he's the only ball handler, he can average 30 and 10. Peyton Pritchard can probably average 25 and 8. Like, these guys are capable of doing that.
Cam Thomas averaged 24. Cam Thomas averaged 24 last year and got cut.
Yeah.
Like, I completely agree with you, especially when you look at like the defensive negative, offensively talented guards, the bar you have to be at to actually deliver positive value. I mean, this is a huge part of what we've talked about with Garland this episode, right? Like, so many guys are falling on the wrong side of that line where they can put up numbers, but if you actually want to be a serious team, they're going to have to be in a significantly reduced role for you. And there's just so many of those players throughout NBA history, but the perception of them has changed so much. Like, they used to give Antoine Walker all-star nods. You know, I mean, he's not a guard, but he's just like total empty calories offense. The appetite for empty calories has gone down to like almost zero in today's NBA.
What's super fun to me is when you look at like the year-to-year progression for individual players. And one thing I've been really studying this season is like how much the box score actually lies to us. Because I really caught on to this trend last year when I was very big on what Halliburton was doing in the playoffs with the Pacers. And it started back in 2024, I believe, when they first played the Bucks. Halliburton like was shooting tour dates in this series against the Bucks, but he was ridiculously impactful, and it was because he made the right decision with the ball every single time. So like he'd put up 15 points and 7 assists on 30% from the field, but be a plus 20. And it's like, how is this happening? So I really spent a lot of time studying how the box score lies to us. And one thing I've caught on to is the idea of this year-over-year progression where LaMelo Ball right now is averaging 19 points. He used to be a 25-point per game guy, and he's having by far his most impactful season as a 19-point per game scorer. But even look at Wembanyama. Wembanyama is having clearly the best defensive season of his career, the most impactful defensive season of his career, and his blocks per game are down like 1.1 from last year. He's averaging 2.7 blocks instead of 4.
Right.
And I think that just really speaks to you can only gain like 2% of what's happening on the basketball court from looking at the box score. There's so many nuances, so much that happens on the court. And I think analytics departments, smarter scouts, smarter GMs, besides Nico, are starting to catch on to these ideas and really starting to build their teams out around these ideas.
I couldn't agree more, dude. And like, it just makes sense inherently. Like, Basketball is a game in which 10 players are on the floor at all times and one player has the ball at all times, which means there's really one player who has the opportunity to accrue a stat on any given possession. Okay, two, right? Because you can have an assist to a score, whatever. And there are 8 or 9 other players out there who are also in some way impacting the possession. And there's just no way to capture that other than watching the games. And I do think like big picture on-off data is extremely useful because it can have its flaws absolutely in a small sample size, even in a single season sample size, right? There's noise with that stat. It's not an individual stat. It reflects team performance when you're on and off the court, and there are variables there. However, if Chris Paul, over a 20-year career, his teams are always 9 points per 100 better with him on the court. And I'm going to come back at Antoine Walker, okay? Or you know what, a DeMar DeRozan, right? These guys who can put up numbers, or a Zach LaVine, whatever, and their teams are always worse with them on the court. That is telling you the truth about their impact. So again, it's not the number, but a box score isn't the number. Like there's no one number. Every evaluation of a basketball player and their value has to be holistic. And I totally agree with you, Tyler, on everything that you said.
Do you guys think we're moving towards a Moneyball-esque kind of era with the NBA? And I mean that in terms of, like, again, how guys are delivering on their salary. And I think there's a big distinction to make, right? Because baseball is so there's not a ton of variables, right? That's the biggest difference is, right, baseball is
so easy to measure impact just with numbers.
And there is a number for literally everything that you do. What I mean so more than is, and they don't have a salary cap, right? That's another big difference, right? The Yankees and the Dodgers, they're going to have such a big advantage over smaller market teams, right? The A's would get priced out, right, every single year with their great players, and they had what I mean so more is finding value in lower contract guys who can, like we've been saying in this whole conversation, deliver on the margins. Do you guys think that league-wide we're kind of moving towards that?
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that's every championship team. Like, and then it's also knowing when to pay up. Like, a lot of people thought OKC overpaid for Hartenstein. I was like, this is great value because he does so many little things on both sides of the ball that'll improve the team. Derek White is at like 30 million, delivering 45, $50 million value. Austin Reeves, obviously his contract's up soon, but he's getting paid like $14 million a year right now. Jared Allen's on a cheap contract. Zubats is making 20 million, and you see the Pacers target Zubats. I think that is definitely something that every high-level team is doing.
And I think you're paying for the contract with Zubats in the draft capital you give up. Like, I don't know if he's drawing 2 firsts, one of which could potentially be the 5th to 9th pick. I mean, he's a really good player, but when you factor in that he's a $20 million player, that drives up his cost on the trade market, just like Trae Young or Jaren Jackson Jr. being $50 million players drives down their value in the trade market. Like, I have to say, I know that the new CBA initially caught a lot of flack. I love it. I actually think it has been the best thing possible in terms of forcing NBA teams to be better about team building, to be smarter. Like, necessity is the mother of invention, right? If you are able to get away with giving out bad contracts willy-nilly because the cap is so lenient, like there's so much forgiveness for those bad contracts, well, you're going to keep doing it. When you have to be extremely deliberate about these decisions, I just think it makes for a more interesting sport. Like, I'm really excited to see a market recalibration. My least favorite thing is when any star, no matter what, gets paid essentially the same amount, right? Everybody gets maxed out. In the NFL, the top 14 quarterbacks all make the same amount. That doesn't make sense because they're not delivering close to the same value. And in the NBA, we have that problem. We've had that problem like league-wide. And, you know, Jaylen Brown was the highest paid player in NBA history. Mike Conley was the highest paid player in NBA history at a time. Like, obviously, none of these guys have ever deserved that title, but that's just the way the league works. And I don't think that's the way the league is going to work anymore. I just don't see how that can possibly be. And I think we're already seeing that. And now I just think it's going to be even more told through the contracts that are signed down the line. Like, Reeves coming up, that's going to be really interesting because he's a great offensive player. But is he a $50 million player, like actually, or is he a $35 million player? Like, regardless of what the box score says, it's probably the latter when you consider like what building a team around him, and especially him and Luka together, is going to have to look like.
No, I was going to say that brings up our next point, because I do
Exactly.
think a huge value add right now is like the ability to build on a rookie contract. We just saw that with OKC.
100%. I want to keep this on a league-wide level real quick, because I just think we're in a flow right now and we're talking about the state of the NBA. One of the big controversies, talking points that we've seen coming immediately out of the deadline has been some of the egregious tanking that's going on. The Jazz sitting both Triple J and Lauri Markkanen in back-to-back fourth quarters of games in which they were leading after 3 quarters, one of which they then lost, another one they actually held on to win. But Logan, I'll start with you. Does something need to be done about that sort of tanking that we have been starting to see and we presumably will continue to see down the stretch this year?
I think the NBA just needs to make league-wide adjustments on a large scale. I was watching a clip from Bill Simmons on Instagram the other day, and he was just talking about the myriad of issues that the league has, if it's the length of the schedule and all of the little ripple effects that it has, the fact that there's so much meaningless basketball that's being played for the last 2 months, the fact that guys are getting injured more often than they ever have before. I don't know what else the NBA can do, right? I thought that initially they did I do know what they could do. They could shorten the season. They could do all these adjustments. But with all the money that's invested in the league, it's not feasible, right? Because everything is revenue-driven in this capitalist society that we live in. But I digress. I thought they already tried to curb the tanking issue by allocating the percentage points that you get for where you are in the lottery. I am a conspiracy theorist, so I think the lottery's already rigged, so I don't really think any of that shit matters anyway. But what can they do, man? Penalize people? Fine the team? I don't really know what else they can do to balance, to check and balance this out. I think there's a bunch of issues with the NBA's regular season, and I think we should have a referendum. I think we should drastically alter a bunch of things about the regular season. I think we should penalize teams for doing shit like that. I would be mad as a fan. That's not a thing in football. You know why? Because if you lose, you're getting shit canned, buddy. Right? You lose 13, 14 games, the whole staff is getting cleaned house, man. Picks don't matter. There is an incentive to win every single game that you play. I don't feel those kind of stakes in the last 2 to 3 months of the NBA's regular season.
I also don't know if the NBA can ever recreate what the NFL has there, though, just because even if you reduce the regular season to 70 games, which I think they should, 72, 66, whatever, somewhere in there, the NFL regular season being 17 games makes every game so damn important. Every game feels so big. You have a full week to prepare for it. It is a physical life or death kind of sport. There's no way to half-ass it in the NFL. Every game is too big. Every game is too dangerous. In the NBA, it's extremely easy to half-ass it, and that's why a lot of teams do. So I don't know if there's a solution to be had on that front. I do think there are some solutions that I want to get to. But first, Tyler, what do you think? What does the NBA have to do if they can do anything about this?
I don't really know. I don't really have an answer for you. I just think at the team level, people are mad at Utah, but it's they're just dealing with the hand they were dealt. If you are going to incentivize losing, they're going to lose. It's as simple as that. You can't penalize the Jazz for doing what you essentially want them to do. The way the lottery is structured out, it essentially wants teams to lose. So when you get to a point where halfway through the season, like you said, it's different from 17 games. Look at the Colts season, for example. They start 8-1. They end up missing the playoffs, but it's in the NBA, when you're halfway through the season, you know whether or not you made the playoffs for the most part. The Jazz right now know there's zero chance they make the playoffs. So why would they try to win? They gain nothing from trying to win. That's the problem. Yeah. So I don't know if the solution is to give everyone in the lottery equal odds, but then you end up with weird stuff where it's the 8th seed that just lost the play-in gets the number 1 pick every year. So I don't know what you do, but I do think that would be a starting point where maybe you don't incentivize being a bottom 3 team.
Yeah. I think there are some hilarious ideas that are thrown out there to fix the lottery. And what I love is people are always like, Eureka, I've done it. I saw our friend Jokic Joestar respond to somebody whose idea was the team that loses in the play-in, the last team to be eliminated from the playoffs, should be guaranteed the number 1 overall pick. And it's like, brother, you just invented a new kind of tanking. Now you just made the play-in meaningless, because every team, if given the choice between getting smoked by OKC or whatever, the number 1 seed in a conference any given year, and having guaranteed the number 1 pick, they are always going to choose the number 1 pick. That being said, there's a lot of dumb ideas. We won't throw out any of those today, or at least we'll try not to. First idea that I had is what you said, Tyler, where you go completely flat lottery odds. That does totally disincentivize tanking, but it also makes it more difficult for teams to rebuild. And like, that's what we have to remember here. Yes, this system incentivizes teams losing, but it does that because that's how sports work, right? If you suck, you need a chance to be better. And the way to do that is you have a better chance at getting the best pick. But obviously, they could never do what the NFL did, because then the tanking would be even more egregious. If it's a literal guaranteed race to the bottom, you get the number 1 pick, it would be even nastier than it is. So we have to have a lottery. If you flatten out the odds and there's really no difference between being the 14th worst team and the worst team, then teams, like, if they know that they're just going to fall somewhere in that range, they're probably going to try to win basketball games, because nobody likes losing basketball games, right? So I do think that that would definitely work to stop tanking. But like you said, Tyler, if the first team out of the playoffs and the worst team in the NBA have the same odds to land every single pick, I just worry that that could put some teams in a spot where, like, they are stuck in the eternal rebuild.
Or it also unfairly loads it. Like, say the Pacers, for example, right? Say they had their pick, or like the Celtics when they landed Len Bias, right? Like, it would unfairly, if your star goes down, it would unfairly load the odds for a team to even get more loaded down the road. Like,
yeah, I think overall it just creates too much of an advantage for the mid teams and too much of a disadvantage for the really bad teams. I think it solves a problem, but I think it creates another problem.
I agree. I think it's tough, though, because also we don't even know truly who the worst teams in basketball are right now. Like, Utah probably could win 40 games.
Kings.
Sacramento is the worst. Sacramento is the worst because they are trying, and they are still the worst.
I'll give it to Sacramento. Same with New Orleans, too, because they're trying to win because they don't even have their pick.
Yeah.
But, like, there are teams that probably perform a lot worse than they actually are, and it's because they're incentivized to lose.
The Wizards have Anthony Davis and Trae Young on their roster, and we're not going to see them this season because they have these conflicting motives of, okay, we don't want to rebuild forever. That's why we traded for these guys, so we can be better. However, we need to make the absolute most out of this one last chance we have at the tank, because we're already too bad this year. We're not going to pick this high ever again. Like, that's what both Washington and Utah are doing right now. They made their win now moves, yet to make sure they get the most value possible out of those moves, they have to lose now more and more egregiously than ever before. It's a crazy system. I do have another idea, though, and I like this idea more. You guys tell me what you think. Because I think, look, we could say, okay, we don't have to go all the way to flat lottery odds. We could just continue to flatten the odds out more marginally from where they are now. But I think we've seen that doesn't make enough difference. Okay, going from a 25% chance to get the number 1 overall pick to a 14% chance, it hasn't changed team behavior. So I don't think that's the answer.
Real quick, I know Adam Silver's not listening, but if you guys wanted people to be less conspiracy theories driven about the lottery, you should just let us watch all the balls drop at once. If you just showed us what happened behind the scenes to all of the audience, nobody would think this shit is rigged anymore. I just wanted to get that off.
That's fair. I think they don't do that because it's so hard to understand as a viewer, because there's so many balls and so many outcomes. I agree with you. There's no downside to it, but they're probably like, who's going to even understand this? But nevertheless, I think you're right. I think transparency is the best. But here's my idea. We should do the NBA draft lottery at the All-Star break. Maybe that sounds kind of crazy, but here's what that accomplishes. First of all, it improves All-Star weekend because you now have an actual meaningful event that is being added to the slate. All-Star weekend, mostly cooked. That's a small part of the value that it adds, but it's something. Much more importantly, though, it completely eliminates any incentive to suck after the All-Star break, which is when the most egregious tanking takes place. That's when teams start shutting down all their players before fourth quarters, and the Wizards are pulling literally every warm body on their roster. It wraps up all this nonsense, all this tankathon, before the final third of the season. So if you just suck from day one of the year to the All-Star break, we reward you for that because you legitimately suck, and we do want the teams that legitimately suck to get the best picks. But if we determine your draft slot by the All-Star break, we aren't going to have the Wizards sitting everybody in their lineup in March and April to guarantee that they lose every possible game because they have no incentive whatsoever to do so. So I'm not saying this is a perfect solution. I think we might just see, to some extent, an adjustment of when the tanking happens. Like, there'd probably be a 2-week push right before the All-Star break when teams that are vying for the top odds would pull some bullshit and do this classic tanking stuff. But after that, there's 25 to 30 games to end the season where you have literally no reason not to try to win basketball games. And I do believe, as much as it feels sometimes like the NBA can have this apathetic culture, teams don't want to lose for no reason. Athletes, coaches, GMs, they want to win if they are incentivized to do so, or if they're at least not incentivized to not do so. And even though, like, okay, these teams suck, these teams that are tanking, I would way, way rather see bad young teams be scrappy at the end of the regular season than see a bunch of G Leaguers out there on the court. Or I'd way rather see Anthony Davis and Trae Young play 20 games for the scrappy Wizards, or see what Jaren Jackson Jr. and Larry Markkinen can actually do in the last 25 to 30 games. I think that is our best chance to bring back actual honorable, prideful basketball to this stretch of the regular season that has become flat out a joke for a quarter of the league. That's the best solution I've been able to think of. It's not perfect, but it doesn't punish teams for simply being bad like a lot of the solutions that try to deter tanking do. And it guarantees that there is no reason to tank down the stretch of the year when we see it at its worst. And I think if you can accomplish both of those things, that's a win.
I have a few follow-up questions.
Please.
Okay, my first one, why would this make the end of the last stretch of the season more meaningful? I feel like those games are even more meaningless now if we've already determined the odds.
The only meaning they currently have for bad teams is that they want to lose. Now their incentive would be we might as well win because if we win, it has no negative impact on our lottery odds.
Okay, I have 2 questions off of that. Are you actually determining which teams are getting which pick, or is it just which team falls in the standings is going to get this pick?
So I think you could do it either way. Personally, I think it's more interesting if you just determine the order at, like, make it an all-star event. Say, okay, we're doing the draft lottery now, because I think for fans, that's probably just more intuitive. If you just lock in the odds, but then you wait another 4 months or whatever it is, 3 months to actually do the lottery, I think some fans might be like, hold on, the Wizards finished with the 4th worst record because they tried down the stretch. Why do they have the best odds? Like, I think it's just simpler. If we're going to say, okay, pre-All-Star break is all that matters for the lottery odds, we might as well just do the damn thing at the All-Star break.
What about potential fluctuation? But yeah, that's my next, like, what about teams that, say, wouldn't be in the play-in at the All-Star break, but would get in towards the end? How do you...
That's where I was going to go. That's like the one fatal flaw, because I when you first brought up the idea, I was like, oh, you're cooking. Like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Like, this solves basically every issue. But, like, yeah, what about the team that's 9th and then fights up to 6th?
I think you live with it. It's an imperfect solution, but I think it is much better than what we have currently.
Would it have to be... Okay, there are 2 solutions. So then you get a team that fights to make it into the playoffs, even if they're a first-round exit. That makes their season more exciting. I do understand that, because we have a lottery pick and we're trying to get into the playoffs.
Right.
But also the other kind of fix could be, you only do like the lottery for the teams that are outside of the play-in, and then you let the rest
that's
of it
true.
play
That would
out.
work too.
And then you just kind of just like do like a second lottery where you throw them into like 11 through 14.
That's true. I think that would work too.
Now that we've had this conversation, this is growing on me. I have one final idea. This is kind of radical. I don't know if this would actually work.
Kill Adam Silver. That's too radical. Logan. It's too far. It's way too far.
What I said. What if we had again, this is kind of wild. End of the year, all the teams, this is after the season's over. We know who's in the playoffs. Maybe even after the NBA Finals, too. I guess this would be really quick because the draft is such a quick turnaround. I had an idea for like a tournament to determine the number 1 pick. Say you cap the ages of guys that can play for your team at, like, I don't know, 26, 25, so you don't actually – or Like, you can't have stars in the tournament to determine the pick, but, like, I don't know, teams play head-to-head in, like, one-game formats to determine.
I think the problem is any system that says if you are better, you have a better chance at getting the most valuable pick is too flawed to me. That's too punitive to the teams that suck. That just, like, suck, and sometimes you just suck. But if you just suck for 55 games and then you try for the last 27 games and you still suck, like, good, bro. There's going to be teams like that. Congratulations. You have the number one pick because this is ethical sucking. There is so much unethical sucking that goes on right now, and it sucks.
I like your idea as an alternative. I think it could work.
To Logan's idea, it's funny, like, to think about, like, all right, Wizards, you won 20 games. Your award is you've made it to the tournament championship, and you have to face Kawhi Leonard for the lottery pick.
Right, exactly. Like, I just think I get where those things come from, but, like, the reason that these teams need the top pick is because they're the worst. So you can induce a competitive situation, and they're still going to be the worst. The thing is, how do we get the worst teams to still play to the best of their potential? And this, to me, is the best way to do it, because it at least ensures right now there are 0% guarantees that any bad team is going to try at any point in the season. And I think this way at least guarantees the 35% stretch that is normally the worst is actually the stretch in which we can confidently say, hey, that team has no reason not to try.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, it would very much improve this last portion of the season, because I can only speak from someone who watches every team as a content creator. I can't even imagine how this feels to the average fan, but, like, there are certain teams that after the All-Star break, I am completely checked out on. I don't even care to really, like, unless there's, like, a cool young player that's popping off or whatever. But, like, I can tell you right now, I will not be making a Wizards video from now until April. Like, that, there's nothing going on in Washington unless, like, Trey and AD come back that would incentivize me to cover the team. So imagine being an average fan who's like, I'm going to tune into this Wizards game. No one's going to do that besides Wizards fans. And but it'd be different if there was, like, a little, like, 2-week period before the All-Star break where, there's probably some egregious, we got to lose these games.
Right.
And then you kind of have a reset. You have All-Star weekend. And then the second half of the season, all of these teams are once again, like, no longer incentivized to lose. And you can still get interesting stuff happening from the bottom half of the league.
And, like, it just makes for better games, dude. There's so many games down the stretch of the year that suck where it's like good teams are sitting on their laurels because they're already locked up. They're in the playoffs. And they can play the Wizards who have nobody on the court. And, their best player, the good team's best player, can sit and they're still going to win the game. Or the whole team can just go 60% for a game. And, like, that happens so much in March and April basketball. We have so many of these fake results. We have so many, like, no disrespect, non-NBA players playing minutes in games. And I just think it has to be addressed. And I really don't think we would see, like, an inversion of the tanking timeline here. Like, I don't think it would be like, okay, now teams are tanking at the start of the season. I think what we would see is, like, again, that brief period before the All-Star break where there's some tanking, and then we're back to competitive basketball. It's just not human nature. It's just not basketball nature to, like, suck as much as you can immediately. Everybody tries the first 20 games. That's just how it goes, because you want to see what you have, young players, you want to see the development, right? There's always a little bit of enthusiasm, excitement, even if they know they're going to suck. You can't immediately say, hey, throw in the towel. Once you're 14-40, you can say, hey, throw in the towel. But under this system, you have no reason to throw in the towel.
Yeah, and a great point that you brought up is, like, the teams don't want to lose right away, because what people don't talk about is the harmful effects of tanking, where you're trying to develop young talent, put them in winning situations. Like, imagine if your idea was in place and the lottery happens at the All-Star break, and game 3, the Wizards are like, we're actually not going to see what we have with Keyshawn George and Alex Sarr. Then where are they going into next season?
Exactly. It wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. So it's the best I've got. Adam Silver, listen up. Adam Silver, you are on my op list right now, bro. You are somebody I'm watching, because what the hell are you even doing, man? This guy is lenient on every issue that the league has that actually needs to be addressed. Like, by the way, this whole question started with what can they do? And, I've got my inventive lottery solutions that'll probably never happen because the NBA doesn't make any big changes that they should. But the other thing is, like, just find them, bro. You can find the Wizards for sitting Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George and Trey Johnson and, every warm body on their roster. Like, that's obvious tanking, okay? You don't have to be, like, pussyfooting around of, like, but what if they were all a little bit sick that day? It's like, we can all see it and call it for what it is. And I'm not going to say that whatever, a $500,000 fine to the team is really going to move the needle much because they have deep pockets, but it is better than nothing. Like, my take with all this stuff is it is better to try something than to simply stand pat and say, well, things suck, but that's the way it is, because it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. So we'll see if they ever do anything, but I think the pressure is on, man. The pressure is on Silver in a lot of ways. The pressure's on him with the gambling stuff. The pressure's on him with tanking. The pressure's on him with the length of the season and player injuries, and I honestly haven't liked how he's handled any of that, but we'll see what he does from here. I do want to end on a high note here. I want to talk about somebody who has been great, somebody whose team actually did not tank whatsoever. Their philosophy was the exact opposite, and yet they were rewarded with the number 1 overall pick, one of the many fun, wonky aspects of this system we have. Cooper Flagg, Tyler, has been balling out as of late, and I want to take this conversation to a bit of a historical scope. I always love when we have you on and we get to dive into that stuff. How many rookies this century have we seen who are better than Cooper Flagg?
Cooper Flagg is unbelievable, man. I think the thing that really stands out to me most about him, a lot of people will point to the downhill athleticism, the defensive versatility. What stands out to me is that not only rookies aren't supposed to be this advanced, but 19-year-olds are not supposed to have this good of an in-between game. It's something that superstars even struggle to figure out. Like, you look at Jason Tatum and Anthony Edwards, they're well into their primes, and they still are like, they don't have a floater. Neither of them have floaters, and it's not a playoff counter they have. Cooper Flagg saw Wembanyama once, and the second time they faced the Spurs, it's floater city. Like, what are we doing, man? Cooper Flagg is unbelievable. He's shooting, I believe, 54% on two-pointers while taking 12.5 two-point attempts a game. I went back and looked at every rookie season where a player's had, like, I believe it was 54% on two-pointers, something like that, and 12.5 two-point attempts a game. And the list, I don't remember the exact names that were in front of me, but it was something like Shaquille O'Neal, Tim Duncan, Zion Williamson. It was like those guys. And then it's Cooper Flagg, who takes half of his shots from mid-range. Cooper Flagg's mid-range game is unbelievable. The downhill athleticism is unbelievable. If he figures out how to, like, draw a few more fouls, and then also the three-point shot pans out, I mean, he's already making advanced playmaking reads. He's already showing the defensive versatility. To me, this century, there's only one rookie who is just head and shoulders better than Cooper Flagg, and that is Victor Wembanyama. And that's not because of the hype with Wemby. It's the fact that Wemby stepped in and was already at worst the third best defender in basketball, and that just has so much value. And then by the end of his rookie season, like that second half of the season, he was already this efficient 24 point per game guy. So that that's just an outlier. Like, Wemby was an all NBA second team type of guy as a rookie. But outside of that, Cooper Flagg can go. I'm not saying he's comfortably better than anyone else, but I think he can go toe-to-toe with any other rookie this century.
I completely agree. Yeah, he just turned 19 on December 21st, and this last stretch was unreal. I don't know if it's anything we've seen from a rookie in a long time. He was the youngest player in NBA history to have 4 straight 30-point games. This stretch I'm going to refer to is from the 29th of January to February 5th. Cooper gave you 38, 9, and 5 on 56, 44, 86 splits, 64.1% true shooting with just under 2 blocks a game and 7 free throw attempts a night. He was the first rookie since Michael Jordan to give you 30 or more points and 5 or more rebounds over 4 straight games, and the first rookie since Allen Iverson to have 150 or more points over a 4-game stretch. Like, I completely agree, Tyler. His offensive development is remarkable. Like, he looks like a completely different player from the beginning of this season. He's way more confident. His handle is so much better. And he just has this kind of veteran poise and feel, man. Like, the elite versatility with or without the ball.
What's so funny to me is I remember last time I was on the show, it was when they were playing Cooper Flagg at point guard. And we were saying whether or not we think that's like a good strategy for the Mavs moving forward. And I was under the scope of, like, it's not harmful, but you don't want Cooper Flagg to build bad tendencies by being like thrown into the fire. And Carson said Cooper Flagg has been the ultimate figure it out player. Like, you throw him into the fire and it takes him like 2 weeks to figure it out. I think he's figured it out. I think he's going to be all right.
Yeah, the trial by fire has worked, man. Like, I'm all in. I think that Wemby's the only guy that I can concretely say this century has been better than him, and I just think he's inevitably going to be one of the 5 best players on the planet, man. Coop is absolutely unreal.
It's just really exciting when you see a guy who's 17 years old, weight of the world on his shoulders, number 1 prospect in his class, goes to the premier program in the nation, struggles for his first 10 games at Duke, and then from that point forward is flat out the best player in the country, national player of the year, and we view him as like one of the best prospects of this century. That's what he did last year. Again, playing up, right? He's 17 years old, and that's what he accomplished. 17 years old when the season started. This year, he comes in 18 years old, weight of the world on his shoulders, number 1 pick, struggles, especially for the first 10 games, really for the first 20 games, and since then has been flat out fantastic. Like the progression that we see from this guy, just the basketball talent that he is, you really can't overstate the age aspect of it. Because when we're talking about rookies, it's like, all right, I would say that Blake Griffin was a better rookie than Cooper Flagg. Blake Griffin was also 2.5 years older than Cooper Flagg. He was a grown-ass man.
Rookie season, yeah.
Exactly. He missed his rookie season. He was already older coming into the draft substantially than Flagg. So it's like a different conversation. If we're talking about rookie Blake Griffin in terms of age, that's going to be year 3, maybe even year 4 Flagg. So that is important to frame this conversation. If you just look at the company that he's among, considering his age, most points per game ever by an 18-year-old, number 1, LeBron James, 20.2 points per game. Number 2, Cooper Flagg, 18.8 points per game. Next, Dwight Howard, 10.5 points per game. No one comes remotely close in terms of 18-year-olds to what LeBron did and what Flagg did. Most points per game by a 19-year-old ever with a minimum of 20 games. Number 1, LeBron, 22.6. Number 2, Flagg, 22.5. Like, it's insane what he is doing considering his age, and it's insane how much he's improved this season. Through November, first 20 games of the year, Flagg was averaging 16.7 points, 3.5 assists. He was under 54% true shooting, negative 8.5 plus minus per game. Since December 1st, that's 29 games now, 23 points per game, 4.6 assists, better than 57% true shooting, and his team is slightly winning the minutes when he's on the floor. Like, just considering how he did start the year, it was like, man, they really threw this guy into the deep end with having him play point guard with this horrible roster around him, bad spacing, no other ball handlers, and just the handle he did not look comfortable with at this level. The finishing wasn't good enough. The shot making, like everything about his offensive game just looked uncomfortable and not yet ready for the level of burden that they were tasking him with. Since December 1st, I mean, I read off all those numbers. The volume is insane. The efficiency also, dude. 67% in the restricted area. You mentioned, Tyler, just the downhill scoring is so damn impressive from a 19-year-old. 5.5 free throw attempts a game, gets to the line a fair bit, probably could get there even more, but like that's still a really good free throw rate for a rookie forward. But then the thing that really stands out is the intermediate game. I mean, 48% in the paint outside the restricted area, 44% from mid-range at volume, and the other crazy thing to start this season is like Cooper Flagg could not hit a 3 to save his life, which was surprising to me. And it got to the point where it's like, hey man, maybe just don't take those shots. Now that has started to come around, right? He's still keeping the volume relatively low as he should, but 34% from 3 since December 1st. That's a big turnaround over 2.5 months of basketball now. And he's hitting those shots at a decent clip. And I do think he'll be a good 3-point shooter. That's the next thing to come around, but he's got really good touch. He's a really good free throw shooter. So it's been incredible to watch. And what stands out most to me is just how much he has figured out how to use his size and strength to get to his spots. Like, I think the handle looks more comfortable than it did early this year. That was always my biggest concern about Flagg at this level. It's just, does he have the handle to be like a primary ball handler at this point? Right, we saw some great athletes, dudes bringing ball pressure who could really get up in his dribble and turn him around and just sort of keep him from getting by them, and that was an issue. I do think the handle's improved. I also think it's definitely still below average for like a lead ball handler type, which makes sense because he's a 6'9", 19-year-old. What he's gotten so good at, though, is using that offhand. Like, I think Flagg is one of the best in the league when it comes to using his offhand just to create a little bit of space, right? Give guys a bump. And then he already plays with such great pace out of pick and roll. Like, it's not just the intermediate shot making, it's also the presence and the control to just like chisel his way to those spots around the elbows and in the lane that like not a lot of dudes at all at this age do. And then he can just rise up and shoot over people. He's 52% on runners. Like,
Well, I mean,
he's one of the best in the league at those shots.
I'm not trying to hate on it, but it's such a stark contrast from like a rookie LeBron too, right? Like teams would employ complete drop against a young LeBron for a long time. 2-3 years into his career, it's like we want him to settle for a jump shot. It's like, yeah, that's a great look for Coop.
Yeah, well, obviously they're also like in totally different
and he's a
spheres
freak
as
athlete,
athletes,
right? Like you're gonna sell out on him from getting to the rim, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
and Flagg, although he is a very good athlete, I don't think his athleticism pops that much offensively because it's like great vertical athlete. Obviously, his defensive size and length and range is super valuable. Offensively, though, just because he doesn't have like that first step, he doesn't have that sort of like crazy flexibility, pliability. Like it's not like in the half court, Cooper Flagg has a lot of like, oh my God, what an athlete moments. In transition, he does. Defensively, he has some. But offensively, it's more so like strength and shot making and skill and poise and passing and like just very veteran stuff, which isn't that surprising because we knew, right, this guy, what is his selling point as being this elite prospect is how well-rounded he is, right? The fact that he's like at least a B+ at everything and how smart he is, how mature he is, the frame that he does have. But seeing it come together like this his rookie year has been incredible. And I just think you see all the potential for this guy to be a top 10, even a top 5 player in this league as a truly elite do-it-all forward. And as his shooting improves, as we see him play with actual ball handlers, like I think Flagg is going to be a really good off-ball player in the league because of the cutting. And if he becomes a 38% catch and shoot guy from deep, which I totally think he can, like he'll work with anybody. And then he can score at every level. He's a 4-level scorer. I think that should be the term, by the way. I think we should say 4-level scorers instead of 3-level because I think the mid-range and floater range are different levels. But anyways, he's going to have them all once he really gets the 3-ball going. And he's already making like these passes look easy in a way that is extremely rare for a 19-year-old forward. I just think if this guy's on your team, you're going to win. Like with any configuration, you're going to be so damn good. So that's the big picture thing. He's delivered on all my expectations and maybe even a little bit more so. I want to get into the specifics of this conversation, though, where he ranks. So I would take Blake over him. Is there pushback on that?
Well, I think it's important to specify what we mean when we talk about like Flagg as a rookie, because I do think, and this is a similar thing to what happened with Wemby, it's very much a tale of two rookies with Cooper Flagg, because a lot of these guys, you're comparing them to like the start and finish of their season. And I think if you go for the angle of like the start of Flagg's season to the like where it's at now, a lot
What's
of guys
Flagg's rookie peak?
Right. So rookie peak is where things get really difficult because, like I think, for example, just keeping it in this year, like if you go start to where they're at right now, Con Knippel's probably been the more impactful rookie to his team. But like right now, Cooper Flagg's playing at a level that Con Knippel just has not reached. So that's what makes it tough. I think Blake, I don't know. It's tough for me because like it's hard to like. I want to see Cooper Flagg sustain this because if this is just the level he's at for the next 20 games, then we're past Blake. we're
That's fair. That's fair.
So it's
Blake, I guess I am viewing it. I am viewing it more as the totality of the season.
Okay,
but
I'll give it to
you're
Blake,
right.
then.
I mean, Wemby and Flagg do defy that in the sense that like they got so much better month after month. I'll never forget. Like
same with LeBron.
Come December, Wemby just flipped a switch. Yeah, same with LeBron. These great talents, and obviously they're all so young. That's a big component. Whereas Blake came in and he could get 22, 12, and 4, and by the end of the year he was still getting 22, 12, and 4. Whereas Flagg, Wemby, even Braun, there's so much more progression within the year.
Well, and Blake also just had that grown man strength.
Yeah, he was
and
an athletic
athleticism
freak.
and physicality.
He was like a top 3 athlete
one.
the second that he set foot in the NBA.
So speaking of tale of two seasons, what do you do with Luka? Because Luka was another guy who halfway through the year took that leap.
Yeah, I think it's so close. I would probably give the nod to Luka. I just think the level that he was operating at offensively, like, holy shit, man. I mean, just the playmaking from him and already the ability to, like, get to the line at the rate that he did and the shot making. I think I have to give the nod to him. And then obviously he took an insane leap year too. But even rookie Luka, the efficiency being just okay, as it is with Flagg, as it is with most of these guys, I still think he was a meaningfully better offensive player than Flagg right now.
I don't know about you guys. Those are all the names that I wrote down. Wemby, Luka, Blake, and LeBron.
I had a few more names that were like in this same tier to me, and I wasn't sure whether I'd give it to Flagg or them. I had Chris Paul. Chris Paul was a really freaking good rookie with his ability to manage the game on offense while also being a somewhat productive defensive player. Chet Holmgren, another
yes, dude.
Chet was
Thank
amazing.
you.
People forget that Chet versus Wemby was a discussion until Wemby took that
Cook.
I'm actually a superstar already.
Cook, dude. I think Chet is maybe the most interesting sneaky pick, where this really comes down to how do you define rookie value. Because if I got to pick one of these guys to drop on an OKC type team at Chet's rookie year, or any team that is our goal is to be good. Our goal is not, hey, let's let this rookie develop and give him the reins. I would take Chet over Flagg every day of the week. But if we're saying, okay, who can make Dallas look respectable, then I think it's Flagg over Chet.
And then Flagg's peak right now is definitely higher than anything Chet did.
Yes, but Chet that entire year being 17-8-2 on plus 5% true shooting with elite top 10 defender on the planet kind of stuff, and his offensive versatility and how lean his offensive game was, how efficient, he was, top 30 something impact as a rookie. And there's very few guys who have done that. I think people totally forget how great he was because Wemby overshadows a lot, and that may be the story of Chet's career. But that year especially, considering rookie expectations, do we give him the tax for the fact that it wasn't his intended rookie season either because he missed his first year with injury? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think we can get into those sort of semantics. But I also don't think it's any coincidence that some of the guys who come up here, Ben Simmons, Chet, Blake, all were a year older than they were when they were drafted, and
Ben
all
Simmons
older than Flagg.
was where I was going to go next, because he's a really interesting case study of he came in at just the right time where the league hadn't fully gone into the offensive renaissance yet.
Right.
So Ben Simmons probably had his best offensive season in year one, and then also was already a very good defensive player. So
Right.
It's weird because it's actually what's funny is I totally forgot when I did that stat of 54% 2-point rookies that took at least 12 twos a game. Ben Simmons was another name that popped up.
Yeah.
Along with Zion, Shaq, and all them. The next LeBron, after all.
Right.
But
Right.
no, Ben Simmons.
We're good, Bron.
Amazing rookie.
Yeah, I think anybody who's going to push back on this being a conversation is a victim of hindsight bias, which I get, because if any hindsight bias is going to get you, it's going to be how we talk about Ben Simmons in 2026 compared to how we were talking about him when he came out in 2016 in his rookie season, 17-18. He was so good and so talented. I don't know. This is a real conversation for me. Logan, do you have a leaning on this one? Because I think
On Simmons.
yeah, he was such a great passer, and he was such a great transition player, and he was definitely a better defender than Flagg. Flagg is very talented defensively, but Simmons was even a level beyond him as a rookie.
This is pre-injury Ben Simmons, man. This is full health.
Yeah. I mean, the
Remember how he
half-court
was
issues were
moving?
still there.
When he was, the way he was moving was, I've never seen something like that. That's why it was LeBron-esque. He was 6'11" and he was the fastest guy in the court.
Right. I still do wonder if you drop him in the equivalent of this Mavs offense. It's tough to do these sort of cross-generational comparisons, but I do still think Flagg is a substantially better half-court offensive player than Simmons was
for sure.
Then. The level of shot making that Flagg brings to the table is just obviously
but also,
totally different.
Ben Simmons'
And
superpower
scoring
was
overall.
that Ben Simmons' superpower was that even if you dropped him on this Dallas team, they'd be a top 5 transition offense. He was a one-man transition off. No matter what, if he was on the court, you were getting fast break layups.
I think Flagg needs to get out and transition more. I actually think there's
100%.
a couple areas Flagg could become even better and more valuable right now. I think if he did more mismatch attacking stuff, if they posted him up more, he's always been super efficient when he does that. He just doesn't do that a lot. Do we have a leaning on this one? I think I lean Flagg because of the half-court offense, but also Ben Simmons in 2018 was such an impactful basketball player. Even though he had this major flaw, the flaw would only become a bigger deal in years to come. And he also just didn't get better. He got a little better defensively, but he literally never got better offensively.
I think the craziest part about the Ben Simmons stuff is that he stepped into a Philly team that basically gave him the keys immediately. He was the offensive cornerstone. He was one of the top touch guys in the league, and they won 52 games.
Yeah.
Cooper, I'm going to give this one to Ben Simmons. I'm admittedly high on Ben Simmons before the injury stuff, but I think what Ben Simmons was able to do, taking on basically the bulk of the franchise that year as the offensive lead guy. I mean, obviously Embiid was still the focal point, but Ben Simmons was their lead ball handler. He made them an elite transition offense. He did everything defensively, and they were a legit Eastern Conference contender that year.
Yeah. I mean, that's 16, 8, and 8 on like even efficiency with real plus defense as the lead ball handler for a rookie is crazy. And even in the playoffs, I mean, I think he gave you like 16, 9, and 8. Like, it wasn't like he fell apart. So that's fair.
Tyler's talked me into it. I'm going to go with Simmons.
I think it's probably right. So I think, again, the Chet versus Flagg thing is totally situational. If it comes down to I need a guy who I can drop on a good team, give me Chet, no doubt. If it comes down to just who can do more heavy lifting for a bad team, it's Flagg. You can kind of pick with which of those you value more. Other than that, okay, I had a couple more. Well, Tyler, actually, do you have any more on your list? Do you want to go
I
through?
did. I had a group of like really high level, like advanced offensive guards who were already.
Tyler, you and I are going to have all the exact same names, bro. This is hilarious.
We're going to have the same. So the three names here, I actually might have one that you didn't have. Did you have Derrick Rose?
No, I did not actually.
So Derrick Rose is one that I consider because he was probably the best slasher in the league from the moment he stepped into it. The other two were Steph Curry and Kyrie Irving. Both were just like ridiculously good shooters and scorers as rookies. Like Kyrie especially, I think was like +5 relative true shooting as a rookie, as like a 20-point per game type of guy. And then Steph just stepping in as the best shooter of all time has a lot of value.
Dude, Steph is so interesting because I really considered him here. I think he was better then than we had any appreciation of at that time. Yeah. And I think he also could have been even better than he was if he was utilized more properly. Like, it just, I don't know if the value was quite there considering, I mean, his 3-point volume should have been, damn near double what it was at the time. He should have been used off ball way more than he was at the time. And he was still so good. I mean, he obviously doesn't even win Rookie of the Year because of Tyreek Evans. Shout out. Probably not going to get a mention on this list. They're fair shouts. I think I would lean Flagg.
I give Flagg the nod over Steph and Derrick Rose pretty easily. Kyrie's the one that I struggle with because Kyrie was thrown into, like, that Cavs team was an absolute disaster. And for him to be, his splits were 49% from 2, 40% from 3, 87% from the line, averaging 19 and 5, which 2012 was the lockout year, super slow paced year. Like, that was a bad offensive year. I think the league average offensive rating was like 104, back to like what it was in the mid 2000s. And for him to be that efficient, just like thrown into the fire for a team, plus 4.1 box plus minus, +5 on off. Like, Kyrie was just a very good offensive player from day one.
He was. +10 offensive on off also. Like, he was carrying them. Let me ask you this, though, because there's another guy who I think makes a very similar case, who I think I might take over Kyrie. I think I probably would slightly. Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard was carrying that offense, dude, and he was doing it with plus efficiency, which is insane. 19, 3, and 7 with plus efficiency, and you improve your offense, your team's offensive rating by 12 points as a rookie. Like, Dame was nuts already, and I do think Kyrie would have been the better pure scorer. I think that Dame was the better playmaker at that point. I might give Dame the slight edge as the more impactful offensive player. They make very similar cases. I think I take Flagg over both. Just because
I think I would too.
The fact that at the end of the day, right, these guys are all negatives defensively, and even though Flagg, because of his age and his offensive role, is not nearly tapping into all of his defensive value, he's still a plus on that end, and his size is so impactful, and he's still giving you like a steal and a block a game. So I would lean him. There's one other guard who I had, Donovan Mitchell. I think Donovan Mitchell was flat out a better offensive player than Flagg. I think the combination of explosiveness he had, and even though the pull-up shooting was less consistent, like, there's just so few guys you can drop into a playoff series as a rookie, and even if the efficiency isn't really good, they give you 24, 6, and 4. Like, that was a rare ability that he had to just carve up a defense with his combination of athleticism and skill. Again, regular season, he was 24 and 4 on -2% relative true shooting. I think his case is elevated by what he did in the playoffs, being a unique kind of lead offensive guy for a team that was legitimately good, a team that won a playoff series, against the PG Russ Thunder, lest we forget. Like
29 points a game in that series.
Like, that's crazy, man.
That's crazy.
But yeah, I think he was the better offensive player. I don't know that he was the better overall player. And I think if we are, well, I said that I was looking at the totality of the year. By the end of the year, I think this is Flagg, because I think the level that Flagg is at now is higher than what we got from Mitchell that year, but it's a conversation.
I agree. I had one more name if that's all you got on Mitchell. My last name and I don't know if this would come as a surprise, but definitely one that just like I think had a sneaky underrated rookie season is Karl Anthony Towns.
Ooh.
He was really good as a rookie, just like a hyper efficient. I believe he led the league in post up points per game as a rookie, and it was like one of the most efficient play types in the league. This is like pre 3-point shot Karl Anthony Towns. He was blocking almost 2 shots a game. He was more of a post up big, but yeah, he was just such a hyper efficient offensive player in a not so great offensive situation. Not many rookies can really reach the heights that he reached as a scorer. That season.
No, that's very true. That's very true. I mean, that's the thing with like pretty much all these guys. It's a given that they're not going to be efficient as a scorer with the level of usage at their ages. Cat is an exception to that. So that's a fair shout. I still think I would take Flagg with the totality of the passing value and the defense, although I do think Cat's regressed as a defender. I mean,
I don't even know what to make of those
but
early Cat years on defense, because it's like I feel like he was better because he was more of a shot blocker, but those were some of the worst team defenses ever. So it's like, what do you even make of it?
He's always had F instincts. I think he just used to be a little bit lighter and more athletic, so he could actually provide a little bit of rim protection, whereas now he is a 0 there and a 0 at everything else other than grabbing a rebound. He's always been a bad defender. It's crazy. Do you guys remember they did some GM poll and like a number of people predicted that Cat would be the best defender in the NBA someday?
Yep.
Literally, that's got to be one of the biggest misses of all time. Okay, I have a couple more guys here, and I think I go Flagg over both. KD and Melo. Just the ability to come in and score 20, 21 a game, even though it's on slightly negative efficiency. I mean, doing that in the eras in which they did it, obviously the scoring volume is very similar to Flagg in a vacuum. However, offensive efficiency has skyrocketed. Pace has increased dramatically. So I think I would give them both the edge, probably as pure scorers. However, I still think I give Flagg clearly the edge as a passer. It's not even close. And the edge as a defender. So I think I take him overall in those sort of like wing conversations against those guys.
Yeah, I agree. I actually had 2 more names. I totally missed on 2 of them that I had. This was like a very brief mention, and he wasn't even rookie of the year, but I was like, AD was already an elite defender.
Yeah, AD was an honorable mention.
An efficient scorer, and like obviously Dame got rookie of the year over him, but I looked at AD. One guy, actually, and this is one of my steaming hot takes, I actually think this guy would be right on the level that we talked about with like Blake and Chet and all those guys. I think, and I've always maintained this take, the real best rookie from 2004 was Dwayne Wade. He didn't win rookie of the year because he missed like 20 games, but Dwayne Wade as a rookie was I think Dwayne Wade was the best player in year 1 out of the 2004 class. I'll die on that hill. I know people will always debate LeBron versus Melo.
Right.
I think it was Dwayne Wade. I think Dwayne Wade was already a plus defender and was already someone who could get to the rim and the free throw line literally whenever he wanted. And so like the Heat, you see that in year 2, he's year 2, obviously Dwayne Wade takes another leap, but like year 2 Wade was carving up the Pistons in the playoffs. And like 04 Wade had at least a fraction of that to him. So I do think Wade as a rookie was ridiculous.
The immediate value he delivered overall. I mean, his first 3 years, they're damn near as good as anybody this century because, I mean, once we go into year 3, obviously, it's those 6 title run. Yeah, that slashing ability off rip, the defense, the passing even being, like, well beyond what you would expect from a young shooting guard at that time. It's a fair shout.
Just to throw some numbers at you. This was 04, so this is the worst offensive season in NBA history. It's the lowest offensive rating of any season, I believe, in NBA history.
Well,
Wade comes in and averages
modern
16 points. 16 points and 5 assists a game, gets to the line 5 times a game, 2 stocks a game. He's, I believe, he's like 2% ahead of league average efficiency, I'm pretty sure, and the Heat won his minutes by 2.5 points. So it's like, that's a good player, man. That's just a very good player.
Definitely a very good player, and like, look, that was a team that got to the playoffs. They sucked the year before he got there, so it's a fair case, dude. Like, obviously, you look at the numbers and everything is so much more cushy offensively in this era, but it is a testament to certain guys, even if they were flawed offensive players, who could just like impose themselves athletically enough, raise the floor of an offense enough to win games in that era. Because like if we're ranking the best offensive players in 2004 compared to the best offensive players in 2026, obviously Flagg's numbers are going to look a lot better than D-Wade's. D-Wade probably ranks higher though in 2004 than Flagg in 2026.
They
That's
also
a good
made the
shout.
second round of the playoffs, and they faced the number 1 defense Pacers.
Yeah.
I believe they were the number 1. Maybe they were number 3. No, because it was the Spurs in 04.
Oh,
then
that's the
Pistons.
Spurs GOAT year. Yeah,
Spurs,
yeah,
Pistons, then Pacers. Pacers were, granted, one of the best defensive teams of that era.
right.
And Dwayne Wade in the second round gives them, let me see, 21 points a game and 6 assists, shooting 49% from the field and getting to the line 8
What are the
times a game.
turnovers though? The one knock I will have of young D-Wade is he was a turnover
It was
machine.
in that series. It was about 4 turnovers a game, so that is pretty high.
Pretty high, but I can
Being
live with
thrown
it.
into the fire against that type of defense and averaging 20 and 6 efficiently, that's not many rookies can do
it's a very
that.
valid case. It's a very valid case. I'm glad that you brought up AD too, because I thought about him. I mean, one of the best rookie defenders we've seen this century. Probably not quite good enough offensively, but I think you can argue it is like a Chet situation where it all depends on situation who you would take. By the way, I have Khan down here as an honorable mention. Like, I think Khan is one of the best offensive rookies this century, flat out. He is, without a shadow of a doubt, I mean, in terms of the numbers, the best rookie three-point shooter ever. And I would argue in terms of the ability to weaponize it, like, again, of course, Steph's talent surpasses his, but when you think about the off-ball utilization, the volume, like, Khan came into a league that Steph Curry had completely reshaped with a full awareness of all the ways in which he can impact the game with his shooting and the shit that he does as a screener, like as a movement shooter. It's just, it's not unique at this point, but it's unique for a rookie, like in NBA history. You've never seen a rookie do that as a shooter. So, and you know, he's a plus passer too. He's just a really good player. I had 2 more guys, and then I'm done with my full list. And I think these guys kind of both clearly fall into the category of better than Flagg, but not available enough for it to matter. And that's Zion and Embiid. I think both of them were better than Flagg when they walked into the league, and they both played 19 games in Zion's case and like 30 in Embiid's case. So,
I agree.
do with that what you will.
Those.
But Zion, like, unparalleled as a rim pressuring, rim finishing force as a rookie. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, 100%. I 100% agree with both of those names.
Yeah.
All these names, and you guys didn't mention Kyle Kuzma.
Oh my God, we
fuck,
forgot
guys.
about Kuzma.
Okay.
Wait, we forgot about the real Duke 18-year-old Jason Tatum, who is still about to celebrate his 19th birthday. Happy birthday to Jason. Tyler, it is always a delight to have you on. I mean, we come up with just a few talking points and we go for 2 hours, and it's just a wonderful 2 hours. We appreciate you giving us your time. Everybody, of course, go support Hoop Venue everywhere, especially on YouTube. This man has some excellent basketball content. He is one of our favorite guests for good reason. He's a ball knower. He's a history knower. He tried to challenge my historical knowledge one time. That didn't go well for him, but it's okay because he's somewhere on the podium. Okay, the gold, that's mine, but he's somewhere on the podium. And yeah, just an absolute ball knower. So appreciate you coming on, Tyler. Any last words before we let you go?
Nope, I appreciate you guys having me, man. This was fun, and I can't wait to do it again.
I know we gotta find one maybe before
We got to
the
do
playoffs
something
get
before the
started.
playoffs for sure.
Yeah,
because
I
that's when I'm
agree.
in that's when I'm fully just locked in. That's all I'm thinking
Lockdown
about.
mode. Yeah. No, we will. We'll have you back on. If you guys want more of our stuff, you know where to find us. You can find all of our full episodes on YouTube. You can find the video breakdowns we do on YouTube as well, and you can listen to the podcast across all audio platforms. You can also follow us on social, TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh to see clips from the show, graphics from the show, and of course, all of our short form trivia content. So with that, one last shout out to Tyler, and as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber,
I've been Logan Camden.
I've been Tyler Britton.
and this was Nerd Sesh.